Hi guys, we're going to go through this riveting topic of karyotypes and the SRY gene. Enjoy my amazing diagram here. Just so we all remember, the gonads have a separate embryologic origin than the rest of the female and male sex organs. So just remember that the gonads are near the kidney and then they travel on their way down as while the rest of the sex organs develop. So we know that we usually have two chromosomes. One is usually X, and then the second one determines the sex. So we'll start with Y. If we have a Y chromosome, there is a gene activated on the Y chromosome called the SRY gene. And this gene creates this testes determining factor that changes our gonad to become testes. The testes are important for a couple of different reasons. One, they produce something called Mullerian inhibitory factor. It's also called AMH, or anti-Mullerian hormone. And because this is what dissolves the Mullerian ducts. And without the Mullerian ducts, we do not have uterus, tube, cervix, or the upper 1/3 of the vagina. The other thing that it creates is something called testosterone, which we're all very familiar with. Testosterone helps encourage the Wolffian ducts to stay. And so that has your male internal genitalia like the epididymis, the vas deferens, all of that. It also, via a different enzyme, creates something called DHT. And DHT acts on this urogenital sinus via these androgen receptors and creates the external male characteristics that we associate with male biological sex, like the scrotum, the penis, the urethra, all of those things. Additionally, testosterone, as we hit puberty, increases and it acts on the androgen receptors in our hair follicles and creates male pattern hair. So that's pubic hair and axillary hair. Okay? Now, if instead on our second chromosome we have an X and not a Y, so we're now focusing on this part, since there's no Y chromosome, we do not have an SRY gene. And without an SRY gene, our gonads automatically default to female organs, so they become ovaries. Without an SRY gene, there's no Mullerian inhibitory factor, so our Mullerian ducts stay happy and stay present, and that means that they form the uterus, tubes, and the cervix and the upper 1/3 of the vagina. And without any testes, we cannot make testosterone. So without testosterone, the Wolffian ducts die. So that's why we don't have a vas deferens. And then they can't make DHT. So the default, again, becomes female external features. So like the vulva, the lower 2/3 of the vagina, the clitoris. Now our ovaries are responsible for the estrogen that is produced. And anytime you have estrogen, you get breast development. So anytime you see a problem that somebody has breast development, you know that somehow they're producing estrogen. And there's some ways to do that. And we'll go over that. So in order for this to be relevant for CREOGs, we're going to go over the four big syndromes, and that's Malaria Genesis, Androgen Insensitivity syndrome, Swyer syndrome, and Turner syndrome. So in Malaria Genesis, they are biologically female. They are 46XX, and their issue is that they have an embryologic underdevelopment. So phenotypically, actually we'll go through this step by step. So because they don't have an SRY gene, we're out of the SRY gene, automatically the default is that the gonad that they'll have is an ovary. Because they have ovaries, they're going to produce estrogen. And because they produce estrogen, they will have breast development. That's really important to associate. So because they do not have an SRY gene, there will be no Mullerian inhibitory factor, right? And if there's no Mullerian inhibitory factor, they should be able to keep their Mullerian ducts, and that is what makes the uterus, etc. But in this case, there's some sort of defunct in their embryological development. We don't know exactly why, but that is the kicker. They don't have a uterus present, or they may have remnants of a uterus. They will have, since they do not have testes, they won't have male levels of testosterone, so no. And although they have, they will have like normal pubic hair, axillary hair development, but they will not have, because they do not have DHT, because they don't have testosterone or testes, they will have female genitalia. So phenotypically, they look female. Now, if we go to androgen insensitivity syndrome, these patients are 46XY, and they have a mutation in their androgen receptor. They're XY. So because they have the Y, they should have SRY gene and they should have testes. So their gonads would be testes. Because they have testes, they should be making Malaria inhibitory factor, or AMH. So yes. So therefore, there should not be a uterus present. Now, because they have testes, they are producing high levels of testosterone. So they should have male levels of testosterone. But the issue is that their receptors are not functional. So because the receptors are not functional, the external features of the urogenital sinus can't develop because the estrogen or the androgen receptor isn't seeing the hormone. So they don't have male external genitalia and they don't have pubic hair. But they do have breast development. And bear with me here. The reason why is when you have a surplus of testosterone, there's aromatase, an enzyme we're very intimately familiar with, that creates estrogen. And this estrogen causes breast development. Okay? So phenotypically, because they don't have male external genitalia and they do have breast development, they look female, even though they're biologically male. Now, Swyer syndrome, they're also biologically male, but the issue is there's some sort of mutation or wrong part in the SRY gene. So their SRY gene is not functional. Again, if the SRY gene is not functional, they can't make testes. So they actually have defunct, and again, beyond the scope of this, they have what are called streak ovaries. So they're not really functional ovaries. Okay, if they don't have functional ovaries and they don't have testosterone, are they going to have breasts? No, they don't have excess testosterone to make estrogen, and they don't have ovaries that are functional to make estrogen either. Because there's no SRY gene, will they have Malaria inhibitory factor? The answer is no. So they will have no Malaria inhibitory factor, and since that is not there, can their uterus develop? Yes, it can. Do they have male levels of testosterone? Well, since they don't have testes, no. So will they have pubic hair or axillary hair? No. And then male external genitalia. If they don't have DHT or be through the SRY gene pathway, the default again will be the female genitalia. So no. So these patients look phenotypically female as well. Last but not least is Turner syndrome. So Turner syndrome is a little bit different. It's instead of having 2 chromosomes, it can also be called 45X. There's only 1 chromosome. So we're missing this second chromosome here. Again, there's no SRY gene. Missing chromosome. Okay. They're also going to have streak ovaries. They can also have mild levels of functional ovaries, but that's, again, rare, but it depends on the degree. Since they do not have the SRY gene, there will be no Malaria inhibitory factor, so therefore there can be a uterus present, yes. Since they don't have testes, they will not have male levels of testosterone. They have streak ovaries, so there could be some estrogen being produced, but also there can be mosaicism, which means some of their cells have 45X, and some of them have 46XX, so they're normal. So it can be no or yes, depending on the varying degrees of functional ovaries as well as mosaicism. And the same can be said for the pubic axillary hair. Will they have male pattern external genitalia? Because they do not have DHT or testosterone, they will have no male looking. So again, on the outside, they won't have breast development, or they can have some breast development, but they will not have male external genitalia. So they look phenotypically female. So to finish this up and kind of review everything, this is a good screenshot picture of everything that you would need to know. We'll do a question. A 17-year-old presents with primary amenorrhea. She has Tanner stage 4 breast development, so normal breast development. Tanner 1 pubic and axillary hair, so no axillary or pubic hair, and a blind ending vagina. There's no uterus. So with Swyer syndrome, we know that there is a uterus. So uterus is present, so we know that this is out. With Turner syndrome, additionally, because there's no Y, they do not, I realized I spelled this wrong on here, sorry. This is out. Now, it could be Malaria Genesis or Androgen Insensitivity syndrome. Both of these do have breast development, so that is present because they have some level of estrogen. But the key difference is that this has scant or absent pubic hair, and that is the case with this patient. So the answer here is androgen insensitivity syndrome, and that's because those androgen receptors are not seeing the testosterone and DHT. So that is your answer, and that's it.